The great chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with worried voices. Representatives from 1,000 worlds filled the massive hall, their different shapes and colors making it look like a rainbow of fear. Admiral Cathara stood at her station, her blue skin darker than usual as she studied the reports flooding in from the outer systems. The Zephyrian Empire had struck without warning. 3 star systems had gone dark in the past week. No messages, no calls for help, just silence where millions of beings once lived and worked. "The situation is serious but manageable," announced Councillor Vexhai from the center podium. His forearms moved in the traditional gestures of calm authority. "We have faced threats before. The protocols exist for good reasons." Admiral Cathara activated her display screen. The holographic map showed the affected systems in angry red dots. The Zephyrian fleet movements looked like a spreading disease across the star charts. She had seen wars before, but something felt different about this one. "Admiral, your assessment?" asked the council speaker, her voice echoing through the chamber. Cathara stepped forward. "The Zephyrians are moving faster than our models predicted. Their ships appear to have new technology, energy signatures we have never seen before." She paused, looking at the sea of worried faces. "I recommend we mobilize the 2nd and 5th battle groups immediately." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. This was the standard response. The Galactic Council had kept peace for over 3,000 years using measured force. Send enough ships to show strength, but not so many as to escalate the conflict beyond control. "What about the human patrol ships in Sector 7? Asked Councillor Ythara from the Centauri delegation. "They are closer to the affected systems." The chamber fell silent. Even suggesting human involvement in a real military operation was controversial. Admiral Cathara felt her stomach tighten. She had worked with human captains before on border patrol missions. They were unpredictable. "The humans remain under probationary status," Councillor Vexhai replied firmly. 200 years of membership does not erase their violent history. The restrictions exist for everyone's protection. Admiral Cathara remembered the first time she had read human military history. The reports from their homeworld were disturbing. Wars that lasted years. Entire cities destroyed. Weapons designed not just to kill, but to cause maximum suffering. The humans called it their Dark Age, but it had lasted for thousands of years. When humans first applied for Galactic Council membership, the debate had gone on for decades. Some argued they were too violent, too unpredictable. Others pointed to their remarkable ability to adapt and their surprising loyalty to allies. The compromise was probationary membership with strict military restrictions. Human ships could patrol borders. They could respond to distress calls from civilian vessels. They could even engage pirates and smugglers. But they were forbidden from participating in large-scale military operations. Their captains received constant oversight from Galactic Command. Every weapon system on their ships was monitored and limited. "The human patrol ships will continue their current assignments," the council speaker declared. "Border security only. Admiral Cathara, you have authorization to deploy battle groups 2 and 5. Standard engagement protocols apply." Admiral Cathara bowed her head in acknowledgement, but privately, she wondered if standard protocols would be enough. The reports from the Zephyrian advance were unlike anything in the military databases. Ships that seemed to heal themselves after taking damage. Weapons that cut through energy shields like they were made of paper. As the council session ended, Admiral Cathara walked through the station corridors toward her command center. The walls displayed news feeds from across the galaxy. Refugee ships were already streaming away from the border systems. Families packed everything they could carry, running from an enemy they did not understand. Her communication officer, Lieutenant Sekhai, approached with a datapad. "Admiral, we are receiving reports from our scout ships near the Kepler Nebula. The Zephyrians appear to be massing a large fleet there." Admiral Cathara studied the tactical display. The enemy formation was massive, larger than anything they had faced in living memory. "How long until our battle groups reach intercept position?" 18 hours for the 2nd battle group, 22 for the 5th, Sekhai replied. "And the human patrol ships in that sector?" Sekhai checked his datapad. "The UES Indomitable and her squadron are approximately 4 hours away from the Zephyrian position. Captain Chen has requested instructions." Admiral Cathara knew Captain Sarah Chen by reputation. The human officer was competent, but had a disturbing tendency to interpret orders creatively. Like most humans, she seemed to view regulations as suggestions rather than absolute commands. Send standard instructions. Maintain safe distance, observe and report. No engagement under any circumstances. Understood, Admiral. As Lieutenant Sekai left to transmit the orders, Admiral Cathara remained at the tactical display. The red dots representing Zephyrian ships seemed to pulse with menace. Something about this enemy felt wrong. Different from the usual territorial disputes and trade wars the Council had dealt with for centuries. The Galactic Council had achieved peace through careful diplomacy and measured responses. When conflicts arose, they deployed just enough force to restore order, without creating new enemies. It was a system that had worked for 3,000 years across hundreds of species and millions of worlds. The restrictions on human military participation were part of that system. Humans were still newcomers, barely out of their primitive warrior phase. They thought differently about conflict, approaching it with an intensity that made other species uncomfortable. Their military academies taught concepts like total war and acceptable losses that most civilized beings found disturbing. Admiral Cathara had attended joint training exercises with human officers. She had watched them plan operations with a thoroughness that bordered on obsession. They prepared for scenarios that other species considered impossible or unthinkable. They trained for situations where normal rules no longer applied. It was precisely that mindset that made them dangerous as allies. Humans did not seem to understand the concept of proportional response. When threatened, they escalated rapidly and completely. Their history was full of conflicts where they had destroyed enemies so thoroughly that nothing remained but cautionary tales. The communication console chimed with an incoming message. Admiral Cathara activated the display to see Captain Chen's face appear on the screen. The human looked younger than her service record suggested, with short brown hair and the intense eyes that seemed common among her species. Admiral, we have reached observation position near the Kepler Nebula. The Zephyrian fleet is larger than initial reports indicated. We count at least 300 capital ships and twice that many smaller vessels. Admiral Cathara felt her blood chill. A fleet that size could devastate entire sectors. Captain, maintain your distance and continue observation. Battle groups 2 and 5 are en route. Understood, Admiral. But I should mention, we are detecting some unusual energy signatures from the Zephyrian ships. Our sensors are having trouble getting clear readings, but the power levels are off the charts. Noted, Captain. Transmit all sensor data to Fleet Command immediately. Already done, Admiral. Chen out. The screen went dark, leaving Admiral Cathara alone with her doubts. The Galactic Council's confidence in standard procedures seemed increasingly misplaced. The Zephyrians were not following the usual patterns of galactic conflict. They were not making demands or seeking territory. They were simply advancing and destroying everything in their path. As she prepared to brief the senior staff, Admiral Cathara found herself thinking about the human patrol ships. Captain Chen and her small squadron were the closest friendly forces to the largest enemy fleet in recorded history. Under normal circumstances, that would be considered a tactical advantage. But the restrictions were clear and absolute. Humans were not allowed to participate in large-scale military operations. The rule existed for good reasons, written in the blood of countless wars and carved into the foundation of galactic peace. Admiral Cathara had sworn to uphold those rules no matter the cost. She just hoped the cost would not be higher than anyone could imagine. 3 months had passed since the first Zephyrian attack, and Admiral Cathara stood in a command center that looked nothing like the confident military hub it had been before. Status screens glowed red with lost systems. Communication boards flashed with distress calls that would never be answered. The smell of recycled air carried the bitter taste of fear. The second battle group had lasted exactly 14 hours. Admiral Cathara still remembered receiving the final transmission from Admiral Thekvar before his flagship went silent. His voice had been calm, professional right up until the end. Unknown weapon type. Shields ineffective. Hull breach on all decks. Tell my family I owe. Then nothing but static. Admiral, we have lost contact with Reconnaissance Group 7, reported Lieutenant Sekai. His voice had grown hoarse from delivering bad news over the past months. Last position was Grid 47 Alpha, near the Meridian colonies. Another dozen ships gone. Another few thousand trained officers and crew who would never see their homeworlds again. Admiral Cathara marked the location on her tactical display with another red X. The pattern was becoming clear. and it terrified her. The Zephyrians were not just winning. They were playing by completely different rules. Traditional galactic warfare followed patterns developed over thousands of years. Fleets would meet in space, exchange fire at long range, and eventually one side would retreat or surrender. Battles lasted hours, sometimes days. Casualties were measured in percentages. Winners tried to capture enemy ships when possible, to study their technology and interrogate survivors. The Zephyrians did none of these things. They arrived without warning, destroyed everything in sight, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. They left no survivors, took no prisoners, and showed no interest in negotiation. Their weapons seemed to ignore energy shields entirely, cutting through defensive barriers like they did not exist. Worse, their ships appeared to heal themselves. Multiple battle reports described Zephyrian vessels that continued fighting, even after taking damage that should have destroyed them completely. Hull breaches sealed themselves. Weapon systems that had been blasted apart somehow returned to full operation. "What is the status of the evacuation fleets?" Admiral Cathara asked. "The civilian evacuation is proceeding as fast as possible," Lieutenant Sekai replied, checking his datapad. "But we are running out of safe harbors. 7 core systems are already overflowing with refugees." Admiral Cathara studied the tactical display. The red zones representing Zephyrian-controlled space now covered nearly a quarter of the outer rim. Millions of beings had fled their homes carrying only what they could fit in cargo holds and passenger compartments. The lucky ones made it to evacuation ships before the enemy arrived. The unlucky ones simply disappeared along with their entire worlds. The worst part was the silence. When the Zephyrians took a system, all communication stopped immediately. No distress calls, no surrender broadcasts, no final messages from doomed colonies. Just empty space where thriving civilizations had existed for centuries. The council chambers had become a place of desperate arguments and impossible choices. Every day brought new reports of defeat, new demands for action, new voices suggesting solutions that no one wanted to consider. "Admiral," came a voice from behind her. Admiral Cathara turned to see Counselor Vexai approaching her station. His forearms moved nervously, a sign of stress among his species. "The Council is requesting another briefing on our military options." Admiral Cathara gestured to the tactical display. "This is our situation, Counselor. The 5th Battle Group was destroyed yesterday. The 7th Battle Group retreated after losing 60% of its ships. We have 3 battle groups remaining, but they are spread across 15 sectors trying to protect the evacuation routes." Counselor Vexai studied the display with growing alarm. "What about our allies?" "The Centauri Federation promised to send reinforcements. They did. The Centauri 3rd Fleet engaged a Zephyrian force near the Vega system 3 days ago. We lost contact after the first exchange of fire." The counselor was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "How is this possible? We are the greatest military alliance in galactic history. Our fleets have maintained peace for 3,000 years." Admiral Cathara had asked herself the same question every day for 3 months. The Galactic Council commanded millions of ships, billions of trained personnel and technology that had been refined across countless worlds and species, yet they were losing to an enemy that seemed to appear from nowhere. "Their technology is beyond our understanding," she said finally. "Our weapons are designed to penetrate energy shields and damage conventional hulls. Their ships do not seem to use conventional defensive systems. And their weapons—" She paused, remembering the battle footage from the few ships that had managed to transmit data before being destroyed. "Their weapons target our ship's structural integrity at the molecular level." "What does that mean?" "It means they do not just blow holes in our hulls. They make our ships fall apart from the inside. Metal becomes brittle. Circuits stop working. Life support systems fail for no apparent reason." Counselor Vexhai's skin color shifted to a pale yellow, the equivalent of a human going white with fear. "Is there any defense against such weapons?" Admiral Cathara shook her head. "We have tried everything. Different shield frequencies, different hull materials, different tactical formations. Nothing works. Our scientists believe the Zephyrians have mastered some form of quantum manipulation that we do not understand." The communication console chimed with an urgent message. Lieutenant Sekai activated the display and Captain Chen's face appeared on the screen. The human looked tired, but her eyes still held that intense focus that Admiral Cathara found both impressive and unsettling. "Admiral, we have a situation developing in the Kepler Nebula. Captain Chen reported. Long-range sensors are detecting a massive Zephyrian fleet massing near the trade routes. Estimated size is over 1,000 ships. Admiral Cathara felt her heart skip a beat. 1,000 ships was larger than some entire planetary defense forces. Captain, you are ordered to maintain safe distance and continue monitoring. Do not engage under any circumstances. Understood, Admiral. But I need to mention something. We have been studying the Zephyrian movement patterns for the past month. They seem to be building up for a major offensive, probably targeting the core systems. That analysis is appreciated, Captain. Continue your observations and report any changes immediately. There is one more thing, Admiral. Captain Chen paused, and Admiral Cathara could see something in her expression that she had never seen before. The human looked almost eager. My crew has been running tactical simulations. We think we might have identified some weaknesses in their formations. Admiral Cathara felt a chill run down her spine. She knew that look. She had seen it in the eyes of human officers during training exercises, right before they did something unexpected and usually devastating to their opponents. Captain, you are reminded that your orders are to observe only. No engagement is authorized under any circumstances. Of course, Admiral. Chen out. The screen went dark, but Admiral Cathara continued staring at it for several seconds. Something in the human captain's tone bothered her. Captain Chen had acknowledged the orders, but she had not actually agreed to follow them. Counselor, Admiral Cathara said slowly, there have been some voices in the Council suggesting we lift the restrictions on human military participation. Counselor Vexhi's arms twitched in alarm. Absolutely not. The restrictions exist for good reasons. Humans are too unpredictable, too violent. Allowing them to participate in major operations would be like unleashing a force of nature. But what if a force of nature is exactly what we need? Admiral, I understand your frustration, but the decision has been made. The restrictions remain in place. We will find another solution. Admiral Cathara nodded, but privately she wondered what other solutions were possible. They had tried conventional tactics and failed. They had tried advanced technology and failed. They had tried superior numbers and failed. Meanwhile, somewhere in the darkness between the stars, a small group of human patrol ships continued their observations. And Captain Sarah Chen continued running her tactical simulations, studying an enemy that seemed unstoppable. The Galactic Council still believed in measured responses and proportional force. But Admiral Cathara was beginning to suspect that this war would not be won by following the old rules. The Zephyrians had changed the game entirely. Perhaps it was time to find players who understood how to play by new rules. The emergency session of the Galactic Council looked like a gathering of ghosts. Representatives who once sat tall and proud now hunched in their seats, their colors faded with exhaustion and despair. The great chamber that had once symbolized galactic unity now felt like a tomb for civilizations that no longer existed. Admiral Cathara stood before the assembly, her presentation screen showing the devastating truth in stark numbers. 7 star systems completely lost, 14 more partially evacuated. The Zephyrian advance had slowed only because they were running out of targets in the outer rim. The situation has reached critical levels, she announced, her voice echoing in the unusually quiet chamber. Our conventional forces have proven inadequate against Zephyrian technology. We have lost over 60% of our active fleet strength. Counselor Vexhi raised one of his 4 arms. What about the new defensive strategies proposed by the Strategic Planning Committee? Admiral Cathara gestured to her display. All attempted. The rotating shield frequencies were penetrated within minutes. The dispersed formation tactics resulted in higher casualties, not lower. The quantum dampening fields had no measurable effect on their weapons. A representative from the Altair system stood up. Admiral, what about requesting aid from the neutral systems? The Andromedans have technologies we have never seen. The Andromedans are 3 months away at best, Admiral Cathara replied. Based on current Zephyrian advance rates, they will reach the core systems within 6 weeks. The chamber erupted in worried voices. Representatives called out suggestions, demands, and increasingly desperate proposals. Through it all, Admiral Cathara noticed that one small group remained silent. The human delegation sat in their assigned section, listening but not speaking. Ambassador Rodriguez, the senior human representative, was a middle-aged woman with graying hair and patient eyes. Unlike most species ambassadors, she did not try to make herself heard above the chaos. She simply waited as if she knew what was coming, "Order, order!" called the council speaker, her voice booming through the chamber's sound system. "We will hear proposals in sequence." For the next 3 hours, the council debated increasingly unlikely solutions. Some suggested retreating to the galactic core and building an impenetrable defense line. Others proposed attempting to negotiate with the Zephyrians, despite the fact that no communication had ever been received from the enemy forces. Finally, Councillor Ythara from the Centauri delegation stood up. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber as she spoke the words everyone had been thinking but no one wanted to say. "Perhaps it is time to consider lifting the restrictions on human military participation." The chamber fell silent. Admiral Cathara could hear the soft hum of the ventilation systems, the distant sound of starships docking at the station, the nervous breathing of 1,000 representatives facing the unthinkable. Councillor Vexhai was the first to respond. "Absolutely not. The restrictions exist for excellent reasons. Human military doctrine is fundamentally incompatible with civilized warfare." "What civilized warfare?" Councillor Ythara shot back. "The Zephyrians have destroyed entire worlds without warning. They take no prisoners, make no demands, offer no terms. How is our civilized response working against them?" Admiral Cathara watched Ambassador Rodriguez carefully. The human woman showed no change in expression, but her eyes seemed more alert now, focused on the debate with the intensity that humans brought to everything important. "The humans have been in galactic society for only 2 centuries, argued Councillor Vexhai. "Their homeworld was consumed by warfare for millennia. Their military thinking is shaped by concepts that most species abandoned long ago, such as," Councillor Ythara challenged, "total war, acceptable losses, victory at any cost. These are not concepts that belong in modern galactic conflict." "Modern galactic conflict does not seem to be working," came a voice from the serious delegation. "Perhaps old concepts are what we need." The debate continued for another hour. Admiral Cathara listened to argument after argument, most covering the same ground that had been debated when humans first applied for council membership. They were too violent, too unpredictable, too willing to escalate conflicts beyond reasonable boundaries. But as the arguments continued, Admiral Cathara found herself remembering specific incidents from joint training exercises with human officers. The way they approached tactical problems from angles that other species never considered, their ability to adapt quickly when conventional strategies failed, their disturbing talent for finding weaknesses in seemingly perfect defenses. "I call for a vote," announced the council speaker finally. "The proposal is to authorize limited human military participation in the current conflict. Specifically, we would allow 12 human patrol ships to conduct reconnaissance missions in contested space. 12 ships. Out of the hundreds of vessels in the human patrol fleet, the council was willing to authorize exactly 12. Admiral Cathara almost smiled at the careful caution of the proposal. Even in desperation, the council could not bring itself to fully trust human military capabilities. The voting took nearly an hour. Each representative had to formally register their position on an issue that could reshape galactic military doctrine forever. Admiral Cathara watched the vote counts appear on her display. 847 in favor, 3 opposed, 3 abstentions. The restrictions were lifted barely, and only for 12 ships. Ambassador Rodriguez finally stood up. "The human delegation accepts this authorization. Our ships will conduct reconnaissance missions as directed by Galactic Command." She paused, and Admiral Cathara caught a hint of something in her voice. "Our captains are, of course, eager to contribute to the defense of galactic civilization." Eager. That was the word that worried Admiral Cathara most. 2 hours later, Admiral Cathara found herself in a secure communication room, establishing contact with Captain Chen aboard the UES Indomitable. The human captain appeared on the screen looking exactly as Admiral Cathara remembered her. "Young, intense, and slightly dangerous captain, you have been selected to lead the human reconnaissance mission. You will command a squadron of 12 ships with authorization to conduct observation and intelligence gathering in contested space." "Understood, Admiral. What are our rules of engagement?" Admiral Cathara activated her formal briefing display. "You are authorized to observe Zephyrian fleet movements and report your findings to Galactic Command. You may defend yourselves if directly attacked, but you are not authorized to initiate hostilities under any circumstances." "Crystal clear, Admiral." Something in Captain Chen's tone made Admiral Keithera pause. The human had agreed to the orders without question, but there was an undertone that suggested she was already thinking beyond the official briefing. Captain, I want to be absolutely clear about this. Your mission is reconnaissance only. Observe and report. The Council has authorized your participation against significant opposition. Do not give them reason to regret that decision. You have my word, Admiral. We will observe and report as ordered. Admiral Keithera wanted to believe that simple statement, but decades of military experience had taught her to read between the lines. Captain Chen was telling the truth about following orders, but she was not saying anything about what she would do if circumstances changed. Your squadron will depart in 6 hours. Transmit your findings every 12 hours using the standard encryption protocols. Galactic Command will analyze your reports and provide strategic guidance as needed. Acknowledged. Is there anything else, Admiral? Admiral Keithera studied the human captain's face on the screen. Captain, the Zephyrians have destroyed every force we have sent against them. They appear to have weapons and defenses that we do not understand. Please be careful. For the first time in the conversation, Captain Chen smiled. It was not a reassuring expression. Don't worry, Admiral. We have been studying this enemy for months. We have some ideas about how to deal with them. Ideas? Human ideas, Admiral. We think differently about problems like this. The communication ended, leaving Admiral Keithera alone with her doubts. She had just authorized the first human military operation in galactic history. 12 small ships against an enemy that had crushed the greatest fleets ever assembled. The Council believed they were sending reconnaissance forces to gather intelligence. Admiral Keithera suspected they had just unleashed something far more dangerous than they realized. In 6 hours, Captain Sarah Chen and her squadron would depart for contested space. They carried orders to observe and report, but Admiral Keithera knew enough about humans to understand that orders were only the beginning of what they might accomplish. The real question was whether the galaxy was ready for human solutions to galactic problems. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching the tactical display with the focused intensity that had made her famous among human patrol crews and nervous among their alien allies. 3 days into their reconnaissance mission, her squadron had observed 17 Zephyrian fleet movements, cataloged their formation patterns, and transmitted detailed reports to Galactic Command every 12 hours exactly as ordered. She had also been planning how to kill them all. Captain, we are receiving a distress signal, reported Lieutenant Commander Williams from the communications station. Multiple sources, Eta Carinae system. Captain Chen activated the main display. The Eta Carinae colonies appeared as blue dots on the star chart, a peaceful system home to nearly 4 million beings from a dozen different species. The distress signals were coming from everywhere at once. Analysis, Commander Williams. Automated emergency broadcasts from the orbital stations, the planetary settlements, and at least 30 civilian ships. Text is standard format. Under attack by unknown forces require immediate assistance. Captain Chen studied the tactical readout. The Eta Carinae system was 6 hours away at maximum speed. Galactic Command had assigned the nearest patrol vessels to investigate, but they were 12 hours away at minimum. By the time help arrived, the system would be another collection of silent red dots on the strategic maps. Captain, called Lieutenant Torres from the sensor station, I am detecting massive energy discharges from the Eta Carinae system. Weapons fire, definitely Zephyrian signature. Captain Chen watched the sensor data streaming across her displays. The energy patterns matched perfectly with the weapon signatures they had been studying for months. The Zephyrians were not just attacking the system, they were systematically destroying everything in it. Orders from Galactic Command? She asked. Maintain current position and continue observation of the primary Zephyrian fleet. Commander Williams replied, reading from his communication screen. Under no circumstances are we to deviate from our assigned reconnaissance mission. Captain Chen nodded slowly. The orders were clear and sensible from a strategic perspective. 12 small patrol ships could not meaningfully affect the outcome in Eta Carinae, but they could gather valuable intelligence about Zephyrian operations that might help save other systems. It was exactly the kind of logical, measured response that had been failing for 3 months. Captain, Lieutenant Torres said quietly, the civilian ships in Eta Carinae, their signals are getting weaker. I think the Zephyrians are hunting down the evacuation vessels. Captain Chen closed her eyes for a moment, thinking about 4 million beings who had done nothing except have the bad luck to live in the wrong star system. She thought about the evacuation ships packed with families who believed that someone would come to help them. She thought about the orders sitting in her computer, clear and absolute and completely inadequate. Then she thought about what it meant to be human. Commander Williams, open a channel to all ships in the squadron. Channel open. Captain? Captain Chen activated the fleet communication system. 11 other human captains appeared on her screen, their faces showing the same expression she knew was on her own. They had all heard the distress calls. They all knew what was happening in Eta Carinae. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a situation. The Zephyrians are massacring civilians in the Eta Carinae system. Galactic Command has ordered us to maintain position and continue reconnaissance. The other captains said nothing, but Captain Chen could see the tension in their faces. Captain Rodriguez of the UES Defiant spoke first. What are your orders, Sarah? Captain Chen looked at the faces of her fellow officers. These were people who had joined the patrol service to protect civilians and maintain peace. They had spent months watching an enemy destroy entire civilizations, while following orders to observe and report. My orders from Galactic Command are to continue reconnaissance. My orders as a human being are to protect innocent people. She paused, making sure every captain could see her clearly. I am going to follow my orders as a human being. Anyone who wants to follow Galactic Command orders can maintain position here. Captain Rodriguez grinned. Eta Carinae is 6 hours away. How fast can we get there? 4 hours if we push the engines. But I need to be clear about something. This is going to be a violation of our authorization. When this is over, we will probably face court-martial proceedings. Captain Kim of the UES Relentless laughed. Sarah, I did not join the service to watch genocides happen from a safe distance. Count me in. One by one, all 11 captains confirmed their participation. Captain Chen felt a familiar warmth in her chest. The feeling that always came when humans decided to do the right thing regardless of the consequences. All right, people. We have 4 hours to plan an attack against an enemy that has destroyed every force sent against it. Commander Williams, transmit our course change to Galactic Command with a message. Responding to civilian distress call as per basic humanitarian protocols. That is not going to satisfy them. Captain, I know, but it will buy us a few hours before they can send orders to stop us. The next 4 hours passed in intense preparation. The human squadron had been studying Zephyrian tactics for months, and they had developed theories about enemy weaknesses that no one else had considered. More importantly, they were about to test tactics that no other species would have thought to attempt. When they arrived at the Eta Carinae system, Captain Chen immediately understood why conventional forces had failed so completely. The Zephyrian fleet was massive, organized, and utterly methodical in its destruction. Their ships moved in perfect formations, their weapons fired with mechanical precision, and their defenses seemed impenetrable. They were also completely unprepared for what 12 human patrol ships were about to do to them. All ships, this is Chen. Execute Plan Omega on my mark. Remember, we are not trying to win a fair fight. We are trying to save civilians. Captain Chen watched the tactical display as her squadron split into 3 groups, each approaching the Zephyrian fleet from a different angle. The enemy ships began to turn toward them, weapons charging, confident in their superiority. They had every reason to be confident. 12 small patrol ships against a fleet of over 50 capital vessels was not a battle. It was a slaughter waiting to happen. But the human ships were not planning to fight a battle. They were planning to commit an act of controlled violence that would have horrified the Galactic Council and impressed the most ruthless pirates in known space. Mark, the human squadron did not charge heroically into battle. They did not announce their intentions or demand surrender. They simply began killing Zephyrians with an efficiency that bordered on art. The first Zephyrian ship died before its crew realized they were under attack. The UES Indomitable's weapons targeted the enemy vessel's power core with surgical precision, overloading their systems and causing a cascade failure that tore the ship apart from the inside. The second ship died while trying to understand what had happened to the first. The UES Defiant had somehow penetrated their shields using a weapon modification that should not have been possible with standard patrol ship equipment. By the time the Zephyrian fleet began to respond, the human ships had already destroyed 8 capital vessels and were moving on to their next targets. Their tactics made no sense according to conventional military doctrine. They ignored proper formation protocols, abandoned defensive positioning, and attacked with a ferocity that seemed almost personal. "Captain," Lieutenant Torres called out, "the civilian evacuation ships are breaking free of the Zephyrian containment field. They are heading for the outer system." Captain Chen allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The primary mission was succeeding, but her squadron was far from finished with the Zephyrian fleet. "All ships, begin Phase 2. Time to show these bastards what happens when they threaten our civilians." The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for generations. 12 human patrol ships systematically dismantled a Zephyrian fleet that had seemed invincible. They used weapons that violated several galactic treaties, tactics that ignored every principle of civilized warfare, and a level of coordinated aggression that turned space combat into something resembling a predator hunt. When it was over, 53 Zephyrian ships had been destroyed. The human squadron had suffered damage to 3 vessels and exactly 0 casualties. Captain Chen opened a communication channel to Galactic Command. "This is Captain Chen reporting. Mission accomplished. Enemy neutralized. All civilian vessels successfully evacuated. Ready for next assignment." Admiral Kithara stood on the observation deck of her flagship, staring out at what had once been the greatest threat to galactic civilization. The debris field stretched for thousands of kilometers in every direction, twisted metal and shattered hulls drifting slowly in the darkness between stars. It was all that remained of the Zephyrian Empire's primary fleet. 6 days. The entire war had ended in 6 days. "Admiral," Lieutenant Sekai approached with yet another report. His voice had recovered from the hoarseness of delivering constant bad news, but now he sounded confused instead of defeated. "We have confirmation from Reconnaissance Group 12. The Zephyrian outpost at Rigel 7 has been destroyed. No survivors." Admiral Kithara added another mark to her tactical display. The Rigel 7 outpost had been a massive installation, heavily defended and considered one of the enemy's most important strategic positions. According to the timestamps on the human reports, it had been eliminated approximately 4 hours after the Eta Carinae incident. "Any word from the human squadron about their current position?" Captain Chen's last transmission reported they were cleaning up loose ends in the Vega sector. "That was 6 hours ago." Admiral Kithara continued studying the tactical display. The red zones that had represented Zephyrian-controlled space were disappearing one by one. Each update from the human squadron showed another enemy position eliminated, another stronghold reduced to debris, another threat permanently removed from the galaxy. The transformation was so complete and rapid that it almost seemed impossible. For 3 months, the combined fleets of the Galactic Council had been unable to stop a single Zephyrian advance. Now 12 human patrol ships were systematically erasing the entire enemy empire from existence. "Lieutenant, what is the current status of our battle groups?" Sekai checked his datapad. "Battle groups 3, 6, and 9 are maintaining defensive positions around the core systems. They have not encountered any enemy activity for the past 48 hours. Because there are no enemies left to encounter," Admiral Kithara murmured. The communication console chimed with an incoming transmission. Captain Chen's face appeared on the screen, and Admiral Kithara was struck by how normal the human looked. After single-handedly ending an interstellar war, Captain Chen appeared calm, professional, and slightly tired. "Admiral, this is Captain Chen reporting from the former Zephyrian Administrative Center at Alpha Centauri B. The facility has been secured and all enemy personnel eliminated. Captain, what is your squadron's current status?" "All 12 ships operational. Minor damage to the UES Relentless and UES Guardian, but nothing that affects combat capability. We have completed our sweep of all known Zephyrian positions in this sector." Admiral Kithara studied the tactical data streaming across her displays. The sweep Captain Chen mentioned had covered 17 star systems and eliminated 43 separate enemy installations. It had taken exactly 36 hours. "Captain, what about enemy survivors? Prisoners of war?" Captain Chen's expression did not change. "There are no survivors, Admiral. Zephyrian forces showed no interest in surrender, and our tactical doctrine does not prioritize taking prisoners from an enemy that commits genocide." The simple statement sent a chill down Admiral Kithara's spine. The humans had not just defeated the Zephyrian Empire, they had eliminated it so completely that nothing remained but debris and radiation signatures. "Understood, Captain. What are your current orders?" Standing by for assignment, Admiral. My crew is ready to proceed to any remaining enemy positions. Admiral Cathara looked at her tactical display one more time. The red zones were gone. Every Zephyrian position had been eliminated. The threat that had seemed unstoppable just a week ago no longer existed anywhere in known space. Captain, there are no remaining enemy positions. The war's over. Copy that, Admiral. Should we return to our previous patrol assignments? Yes, Captain. Resume standard border patrol duties. And Captain? Yes, Admiral. Admiral Cathara paused, trying to find words for what she was feeling. Gratitude, certainly. Relief, absolutely, but also a deep growing unease about what she had just witnessed. Good work. Thank you, Admiral. Chen out. The screen went dark, leaving Admiral Cathara alone with her thoughts. She activated her personal communication system and requested a priority channel to the Galactic Council chambers. Counselor Vexhai appeared on the screen within minutes. His forearms moved in gestures of celebration and his skin showed the bright colors of joy and relief. Admiral, congratulations on our victory. The Council is preparing a formal commendation for your strategic leadership during the crisis. Thank you, Counselor, but I need to discuss the restrictions on human military participation. Oh, those will be reinstated immediately, of course. The emergency authorization was temporary only. I think that is wise. Counselor Vexhai's arm stopped moving. You supported lifting the restrictions in the first place. I supported it because we were desperate and out of options. Now I have seen what humans are capable of when those restrictions are removed. Admiral Cathara activated her data displays, showing the tactical summaries from the past week. Counselor, the humans did not just defeat the Zephyrian Empire. They erased it. Completely. There is not a single enemy ship, station, or outpost left in 17 star systems. That seems like a positive outcome. It is a terrifying outcome. We authorized 12 ships to conduct reconnaissance missions. Those 12 ships accomplished more in 6 days than our combined fleets managed in 3 months. They destroyed an enemy that seemed invincible using tactics that we do not understand, and weapons that should not exist on patrol vessels. Admiral Cathara paused, making sure the counselor was listening carefully. Most importantly, they did all of this while following orders that explicitly prohibited them from engaging in combat operations. What are you saying, Admiral? I am saying that Captain Chen interpreted observe and report as permission to eliminate any threats she observed. When ordered to conduct reconnaissance, she decided that the best way to gather intelligence was to destroy the enemy's ability to respond to her reconnaissance. Counselor Vexhai's skin color shifted to the pale yellow of fear. Are you suggesting the humans deliberately violated their orders? I am suggesting that humans approach military problems differently than we do. When we see a threat, we try to contain it, manage it, or neutralize it with minimal force. When humans see a threat to something they protect, they eliminate it completely. Admiral Cathara called up the final battle reports from Eta Carinae. The humans did not attack the Zephyrian fleet to follow orders or advance strategic objectives. They attacked because civilians were being murdered, and they had the power to stop it. But the results speak for themselves. The threat is gone. Yes, the threat is gone. But so is everything else. The humans did not capture Zephyrian technology for study. They did not take prisoners for interrogation. They did not leave any infrastructure intact for analysis. They simply destroyed everything associated with the enemy and moved on to the next target. Admiral Cathara activated one final display, showing the complete tactical summary of the human squadron's operations. Counselor, in 6 days of combat operations, 12 human ships eliminated an enemy empire that controlled 17 star systems. They destroyed over 400 enemy vessels, eliminated 63 military installations, and removed every trace of Zephyrian presence from known space. Surely you are not complaining about their effectiveness. I am explaining why the restrictions must be reinstated immediately. The humans did not wage war against the Zephyrians. They committed an act of species-wide extermination with the efficiency of a maintenance operation. The communication channel was quiet for a long moment. When Counselor Vexhai spoke again, his voice was very careful. Admiral, are you suggesting that the humans are a threat to galactic peace? I am suggesting that the humans are a threat to anyone who threatens something they have decided to protect. The restrictions were never about protecting the galaxy from human aggression. They were about protecting the galaxy's enemies from human solutions to military problems. Admiral Cathara looked out at the debris field one more time, Somewhere in that twisted metal and shattered equipment were the remains of an empire that had seemed unstoppable. The Zephyrians had possessed weapons that could penetrate any shield, ships that could heal themselves, and tactical doctrines that had defeated every force sent against them. None of it had mattered when they faced an enemy that approached warfare not as a political tool or strategic necessity, but as a moral imperative. The restrictions will be reinstated immediately, Counselor Vexhai said finally. The humans will return to border patrol duties only. Thank you, Counselor. That is the right decision. Admiral, one final question. Do you think the humans understand why we are reinstating the restrictions? Admiral Cathara smiled for the first time in months. I think they understand perfectly. Captain Chen will accept the new orders with the same professionalism she has shown throughout this crisis. And if another threat emerges that requires their unique capabilities, then we will lift the restrictions again, and 12 small patrol ships will solve our problem completely. Admiral Cathara's smile faded as she considered the implications.